Let me tell you something that most doctors won't say out loud. Whether you're 60, 70, or somewhere north of that, I've seen with my own two eyes how the right natural approach can bring back the vitality and confidence that a lot of you thought was gone for good. And I'm not talking about some miracle pill from a late night infomercial. I'm talking about something you could add to your morning coffee tomorrow. Just a teaspoon of a plain white powder stirred into your cup or a glass of water that could start changing the way your body works from the inside out. My name is Dr. Claire Weston, and I've spent more than 20 years practicing medicine here in the States, mostly working with men over 60 who walked into my office feeling like strangers in their own bodies. I've sat across the desk from factory workers from Ohio, retired teachers from Georgia, veterans, grandfathers, truck drivers, and CEOs, and let me tell you, the story I hear is almost always the same. Doc, I'm not the man I used to be. And if that sentence hits close to home for you right now, I want you to do me a favor. Drop the number 1 in the comments below so I know you're with me. That's it, just a simple one. It tells me you're listening, and it tells me this message is reaching the people who need it most. Now, here's what I want everyone watching to understand before we go any further. What you're about to learn isn't magic, and it isn't a scam. It's biology. It's the kind of thing your family doctor probably doesn't have time to sit down and explain to you in a 15-minute appointment, because let's be honest, the American healthcare system isn't built for long conversations anymore. It's built for prescriptions and the next patient. But I didn't get into medicine to hand out little blue pills and send folks on their way. I got into it because I wanted to help people actually feel better. And that's what I'm going to try to do for you today. Let me start with something that happened about 6 months ago. A gentleman walked into my clinic. I'll call him Frank because his real name doesn't matter, and he deserves his privacy. Frank was 68 years old, retired from the Postal Service, married to his high school sweetheart for 43 years. Good man, kind eyes. And he sat down in that chair across from me, and he just about broke down. He said, "Dr. Weston, my wife still looks at me the same way she did when we were 22, but I can't look at her the same way anymore because every time I try, my body lets me down." And all of you who have ever felt that quiet shame, that frustration, that sense of betrayal from your own body, you know exactly what Frank was feeling. And I want you to know you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken. Here's what's really going on. As we get older, the lining of our blood vessels, the endothelium, if you want to get technical about it, starts producing less of a molecule called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the single most important signal your body uses to tell your blood vessels to relax and open up. When you were 25, your body was cranking out this stuff like a factory running 3 shifts. By the time you hit 60, that production has dropped by as much as half, sometimes more. And when nitric oxide drops, your blood vessels don't open up the way they used to. They get stiff, they get narrow, and that fast, strong blood flow you used to take for granted. Whether it was for firmness in the bedroom or just the energy to chase your grandkids around the backyard, it slows down. That's why so many of you feel like it takes longer. That's why you lose firmness in the middle of things. That's why your hands and feet get cold. That's why the stairs feel steeper than they used to. It's not in your head, gentlemen. It's in your blood vessels. And here's the good news, and this is the part I really want you to hear. You can do something about it. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking, because I read the comments on these videos. A gentleman wrote to me last week and said, "Doc, why don't you just tell us to take L-arginine and be done with it?" And that's a fair question, and I'm going to answer it straight, because I don't believe in wasting your time. The white powder I'm talking about is in the same family of amino acids as L-arginine. But here's the thing most people don't know, and this is where 20 plus years of practice comes in. L-arginine by itself gets broken down in your gut and your liver before most of it ever reaches your bloodstream. The bioavailability is poor. You swallow a gram, and maybe a fraction of that actually makes it to where you need it. So, the amino acid I actually recommend to my patients, and I've been doing this for the better part of 15 years now, is L-citrulline. It's a precursor. Your body converts it into L-arginine, but it does that conversion inside your kidneys, which means it bypasses the gut-liver breakdown entirely. Study after study, including work out of the Cleveland Clinic and some really solid research published in the Journal of Cardiology, a few years back, has shown that L-citrulline raises arginine levels in the blood more effectively than arginine itself. It's counterintuitive, I know, but that's the science. Now, another viewer asked me which brand to buy, and I'm going to give you my honest answer. I don't endorse any specific company because the supplement industry in this country is the Wild West. It's barely regulated, and I've seen bottles on shelves at big box stores that contain a fraction of what's on the label. What I tell my patients to do is look for a product that carries a USP verified seal or an NSF certification. Those are independent third-party testing organizations. And they actually put the powder in a lab and make sure what's on the bottle is what's in the bottle. If you don't see one of those seals, put it back on the shelf. Doesn't matter how flashy the marketing is. Let me get back to Frank for a minute, because I want you to see how this plays out in real life. Frank and I sat down, and we went through his whole history. He'd been on blood pressure medication for about a decade. He had what I'd call borderline diabetes. Not quite diabetic, but headed that way. He ate a pretty typical American diet, lots of processed stuff, not enough greens, more red meat than his cardiologist would have liked, and he was carrying about 30 extra pounds, mostly around the middle. All of this, every single piece of it, was choking off his nitric oxide production. So I put him on a protocol. Nothing crazy. 1 teaspoon of L-citrulline powder in a glass of water, first thing in the morning, about 30 minutes before breakfast. I asked him to start walking for 20 minutes a day, not jogging, not running, just walking, because walking actually stimulates nitric oxide production through a process called shear stress on the blood vessel walls. I asked him to add a handful of leafy greens to at least 1 meal a day, spinach, arugula, beet greens, whatever he could tolerate, because those vegetables are loaded with dietary nitrates that your body also converts into nitric oxide. And I asked him to cut back on processed meats and soda because those 2 things in particular are absolute killers for endothelial function. 3 weeks later, Frank came back into my office, and I've been doing this long enough that I can usually tell before a patient even sits down whether something's working. Frank walked in, and he had this look on his face, kind of sheepish, kind of proud, kind of like a kid who just aced a test he thought he was going to fail. He sat down and he said, "Doc, I don't know what you put in that powder, but my wife asked me last night if I'd been working out." Yeah, and then he kind of laughed and added, "And some other things are working out too." And it's not just Frank. I've recommended this same protocol to amateur athletes in their 70s who wanted to keep up with guys half their age. I've recommended it to a retired firefighter from Pennsylvania who told me he hadn't felt this good since Reagan was in office. I've recommended it to a gentleman from Texas, 82 years old, mind you, who called my office 6 weeks in to tell my receptionist he finally felt like himself again. She didn't know what to do with that phone call, but I got a good laugh out of it. Now, I want to be straight with all of you, because I think honesty matters more than hype. This isn't a cure-all. If you've got serious cardiovascular disease, if you're on nitrate medications for angina, if you've had a recent heart attack or stroke, you need to talk to your doctor before you start any supplement, including this one. Nitric oxide pathways interact with some heart medications, and mixing them without supervision can drop your blood pressure dangerously low. This isn't me being overly cautious. This is me not wanting any of you to end up in the ER because you watched a YouTube video and skipped the part where I told you to check with your cardiologist first. But for most men over 60 who are generally healthy, maybe dealing with some borderline blood pressure or mild circulation issues, L-citrulline is one of the safest supplements on the market. It's been studied for decades. The typical effective dose is somewhere between 3 and 6 grams a day. That's about 1 to 2 teaspoons of the pure powder. Some folks prefer to split it into a morning and evening dose. Some folks do it all at once. Both approaches work. Here's what I want you to understand about why this works so well for guys your age. When you were in your 20s and 30s, your body didn't need help making nitric oxide. Everything was humming along. But as we age, we accumulate what we call oxidative stress. Free radicals from pollution, from stress, from poor diet, from normal aging itself. They start damaging the enzymes that produce nitric oxide. At the same time, the receptors on your blood vessel walls become less sensitive. It's a double whammy, less production and weaker signaling. And that's what L-citrulline helps correct. It gives your body the raw material it needs to boost production, and over time it actually helps restore sensitivity to the signaling pathway. A lot of my patients also ask me about timing. How long before they notice something? And I'll tell you what I tell them. Give it 4 weeks. Some guys feel a difference in the first week. More energy, better sleep, maybe some morning responsiveness that hasn't been there in a while. But the real benefits, the structural improvements to your blood vessels, those take about a month to start showing up in measurable ways. And if you stick with it for 3 months, most men report significant improvements, not just in the bedroom, but in their overall energy, their exercise tolerance, their mental clarity. Because your brain, and I want you to really hear this, your brain runs on blood flow too. When you improve circulation throughout your body, you're not just helping one area, you're helping all of you. Let me tell you about another patient. A retired Navy chief from Virginia called him Bill. Bill came to see me because his wife made him. Classic story. He didn't think anything was wrong, or he didn't want to admit anything was wrong, which is its own American tradition among men of a certain generation. Bill was 71. Prostate had been enlarged for years. Blood pressure was a little high. He'd stopped being intimate with his wife about 2 years earlier, not because he didn't want to, but because he was tired of failing. His words, not mine. I put Bill on the same basic protocol. L-citrulline, walking, leafy greens, less processed food. I also added some CoQ10 and a little bit of magnesium glycinate at night, because his sleep was a mess, and sleep is when your body repairs the endothelium. 8 weeks later, Bill came back in, and this big, tough Navy guy looked me in the eye and said, "Doc, I got my marriage back." That's not an exaggeration. That's a direct quote from a man who fought in Vietnam. And if that doesn't tell you something about how much this stuff matters, I don't know what will. I want to be real with everyone watching. This country spends billions of dollars a year on erectile dysfunction medications. Billions. And look, those drugs have their place. I've prescribed them. They work for a lot of men, and there's no shame in taking them. But here's what the commercials don't tell you. Those drugs don't fix the underlying problem. They force a response in a system that's already damaged. They're like putting a Band-Aid on a leaking pipe. They cover it up, but they don't repair anything. And they come with side effects, headaches, flushing, vision changes. And for some men, they just stop working over time because the underlying vascular health keeps deteriorating. What I'm offering you is different. This is about actually repairing the pipe. It's about restoring the biology that used to work on its own. It's slower, yes. It's less dramatic, yes. But it's real, and it lasts, and it improves your whole cardiovascular system in the process. Your heart, your brain, your kidneys, your extremities, everything that depends on blood flow benefits when you restore nitric oxide function. And at our age, that's not a small thing. That's the difference between adding years to your life and adding life to your years. I want to address something else that came up in my comments recently. Someone wrote, "Doc, are you even a real doctor, or is this AI?" And I appreciated that question because it shows you're paying attention. The internet is full of noise right now, full of fake doctors, fake testimonials, fake everything. So here's what I'll say. I'm a real practicing physician with over 2 decades of clinical experience. I'm not affiliated with any supplement company. I don't sell products. I don't run an online pharmacy. I make these videos because in my day job, I can only help the patients who walk into my office. But on here, I can talk to thousands of you at once. That's the only reason I do this. And I want all of you to be skeptical. Skeptical of me, skeptical of the guy next to me on the sidebar, skeptical of anyone trying to sell you something. Ask questions, look up the research, talk to your doctor, get a blood panel done. Ask for your fasting glucose, your A1C, your lipid profile, your homocysteine level, and if your doctor's willing, an ADMA test. ADMA stands for asymmetric dimethylarginine, and it's basically a direct marker of how well your nitric oxide pathway is working. Most doctors don't run it, but any decent lab can do it, and it'll tell you more about your vascular health than almost any other test. Here's the part where I'm supposed to wrap up and give you a tidy call to action, and I will. But first, I want to say something that I don't say often enough. Getting older in this country is hard. We live in a culture that worships youth, that pushes you out of the workforce, that treats a man in his 60s or 70s like he's already done. And I think that's nonsense. Some of the best years of your life are still ahead of you if you're willing to take care of the machine. You've got wisdom now that you didn't have at 30. You've got perspective. You've got time. What you need is a body that can keep up with the life you want to live, and that's what this is really about. It's not about turning back the clock. Nobody can do that. It's about making sure the clock you've got keeps running strong. It's about waking up in the morning and feeling like yourself again. It's about looking at your wife or your partner and not feeling like you're letting them down. It's about playing with your grandkids without having to sit down every 5 minutes. It's about reclaiming the confidence that, somewhere along the line, you let slip away because you thought aging meant surrendering. So here's what I want you to do. If you've watched this far and something I've said resonated with you, leave me a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me your age, what you're dealing with, what you've tried before. I read these comments and I do my best to respond. And if you've got a question you want me to answer in a future video, like the gentleman who asked about L-arginine versus L-citrulline, which gave me the idea for my next video, let me know. Your questions drive the content I make. Talk to your doctor. Start with the diet and the walking, even before the supplement. Those two changes alone will move the needle for most of you. Then add the L-citrulline if your doctor gives you the green light. Give it 4 weeks, give it 8 weeks. Be patient with your body the way you'd be patient with an old truck that just needs a little tune-up instead of being sent to the junkyard. You're not done, gentlemen, not even close. The question isn't whether this can help you. The question is how much better your life could be if you finally give your body what it's been asking for all along. I've seen it happen hundreds of times over the last 20 years. I have no reason to think it can't happen for you too. Take care of yourselves, take care of the people you love, and I'll see you in the next video.